Good morning. Today, we are here to offer just a few thoughts about the OBA's recently released platform. We've had an opportunity to read it from cover to cover, and here was what really surprises me. In 20 pages of their platform, the PLP and David Burt are mentioned in name 22 times. That's more than one time per page. Conversely, the PLP's 40-page platform, the OBA and Cannoneer, their leader, Craig Cannoneer, were mentioned just twice. I give you these facts to say that the OBA offers no ideas, no solutions in their platform. It's full attacks on the PLP. A platform is supposed to be a document that outlines what you will do for the country. But when you look beyond the OBA's attacks against David Burt and the PLP and the platitudes with really no details, you will find actually some very interesting items. The OBA stated that they will implement the recommendations of the Fiscal Responsibility Panel, who has said that Bermuda is undertaxed and has recommended tax increases combined with income tax in the amounts of $200 million in value. These proposed OBA tax increases will affect Bermudians and increase taxes on all by 20%. The PLP's Minister of Finance, Curtis Dickinson, and our platform does not agree with all the recommendations of the Fiscal Responsibility Panel and has said that we will not increase the tax burden on existing persons and focus on growth. That is a clear difference of approach, everyone. The OBA supports $200 million in tax increases, coupled with income tax, as recommended by the Fiscal Responsibility Panel. And the PLP wants to grow the economy, not tax it, to increase government revenue. Before the pandemic, we proved we could do this, and we will do it again. The document included, and I quote, to promote adequate island Wi-Fi coverage, particularly in Bermuda schools, end quote. We've put Wi-Fi in our schools and in our budgets this year, and expanded coverage and increased speeds of internet service to our schools. And they said, I quote, we will waive stamp duty on mortgages for the first-time homebuyers. We actually thank the OBA for that wonderful endorsement of a PLP policy. But it's already been implemented by the PLP. So thank you, OBA, for endorsing the PLP's policies around new homes for our families. They've said give payroll tax and other tax breaks for hiring Bermudians in trainee positions. Again, already implemented by the PLP. Throughout the OBA platform, which incidentally is half the length of the Progressive Labor Party's platform, you'll find plenty of attacks on the PLP. You'll find policies that the PLP have already implemented. And you'll find plenty of, frankly, vague statements. No real concrete ideas that will see this country through the economic recovery that we require. To propose things that already exist, frankly, is an insult to the intelligence of Bermuda's voters. And it's unconscionable that the OBA supports $200 million in tax increases on Bermudians during these very delicate economic times. Who is coming up with economic plans? With their plans, in particular, they are not the plans put together by Curtis Dickinson. Bermuda, at the end of the day, is going into an election. This election is about who is best suited to see us through the economic recovery and possibly what is predicted by the experts, a second wave of the pandemic. I think we need to ask ourselves whether it's a no ideas, no solution, no vision plans, and the attacks on the government, the PLP party by the OBA, or is it the team of David Burt, led by David Burt, that has done its best through this election to keep the high road, to keep you informed of what our ideas and vision is, and offer a detailed and realistic plan for the economic recovery that actually does not include tax increases on Bermudians? That is the question that ultimately October 1st will bring the answer. Thank you. Now we'll hand over the presentation to Lindsay Simmons.
Good morning. As many of you know, I'm running against Craig Kennener, and I've been listening to what he has been saying for the past few weeks, and I'm here to talk about character. Because when you talk about leadership and when you talk about economic recovery, we must also talk about the issue of character. We all remember why he had to resign as premier of this country. He admitted that he was, and I quote, less than honest with Bermudians. But last week, Friday, he gave an unannounced address to the country in which he detailed wild accusations and offered no proof and no evidence of those accusations. If I or any regular Bermudian was going to accuse someone of doing or saying something, I would at least need to offer some kind of proof. But Mr. Kennener doesn't offer any. Instead, he simply asks us to take him for his word. But let's say that Mr. Kennener is telling the truth about meeting with the premier. The premier and all of Bermuda know that independence cannot legally happen without a referendum, a vote of the people in favor of it. So Mr. Kennener is misleading again by insinuating that he could even, if he and the premier wanted to, take us independent, which is not true. This is the typical play that is always used against this party. The UBP used it, and now the OBA is doing the same thing. Use their friends in the media to launch attacks during the week of the election. We all know this week there will be some type of old news that is dressed up as new and written with sensational headlines to make the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party and the Progressive Labor leader look bad. Bermuda, please don't fall for any of these kinds of sensationalism by Craig Kennener and the OBA. Let's stick to the facts, and what I'm seeing on the doorstep is a whole bunch of constituents that have not even been visited by Mr. Kennener for years. I am there and I am listening. I am committed to doing what is right by the community and being the community representative for the people of C12. They deserve it. I hope that you will consider character when you go out and vote on October 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. We'll now take questions, and you can address me first and then Ms. Simmons after.
Good afternoon,
After.
Deputy Premier. This question is actually for Ms. Simmons, instead if at all possible.
Sure. We're here to serve.
Why don't you just change seats?
Does anybody else have questions?
Another question.
Yeah, sure, Deputy Premier. So, one of the things, I'm sorry, I mean, I didn't want to do your thing, but I mean, one of the suggestions from the OBA is repealing the sugar tax. What do you think of that? Repealing the sugar tax, reducing the tax on purchasing US dollars? There's a whole bunch of money things here. One of the interesting ones is the duty that retailers have to carry when they bring in goods, because I think it's long been complained by retailers that they have to carry that duty cost before they sell these products. So if they don't sell them, then they're out of luck. So that's been a long talked about idea as well. So some of these things are just costs that people feel could be mitigated by the government. What do you think about that, considering the economic times that we have?
Thank you for your questions. I'll try and deal with them in order. You dealt with first the sugar tax, and then you dealt with another tax in relation to the second one. Can you repeat the second one?
We'll deal with the sugar tax
Okay.
first.
Well, the sugar tax was put in place on goods that have considerably large amounts of sugar that we know are contributing to serious health costs in the country. The consumption of sugar, and I can be very blunt, is killing our people. High levels of diabetes and heart disease and other preventable diseases, which deploy a considerable amount of cost on our health system. The sugar tax was deployed to address that and then deploy some of that tax resources to education and preventative health measures. I understand that some people may have had an issue with that, but that is the purpose of it. And I do believe, and if we can consult with the health minister, I'm sure she can answer this question, there actually has been a decrease statistically in the consumption of sugary products as a result, since that tax was deployed, of Bermudians. We also, as an alternative, and opposite to that, decreased down to zero duty the tax on many fruits and vegetables which are required to be imported so that we have them. So there's been a balance. And if we're about improving the health of the country, I do believe that most Bermudians desire that.
So you're saying there's been a demonstrable effect as a result of the sugar tax?
Yes, there has been.
Okay. What about the retail sector? They've complained forever. And you know they're taking a beating. They've been taking a beating for a long time, long before the coronavirus. Their complaint has long been that they import goods, they pay duty to the government, they have to carry that cost until they sell the products, and there should be some way that they don't have to pay that duty until they sell the goods. Is there a way that that can be fixed? That's one of the suggestions that the OBA is making that they would implement if they were the government. What do you say to that?
Well, what I do know is that the finance minister has had considerable discussions with the retail sector about these issues, and I do also believe that there has been some progress made in that area, and I'm sure the finance minister can address that, and we can address that at a later time. But we have discussed that issue with the retailers, and we've done some things to address that. But as you can see, sir, there are a number of points in the OBA platform where the PLP has already addressed those issues. So I suggest they may be not up to date on the progress of these measures, just as they are with the things that I mentioned, with the internet for schools, the Wi-Fi for schools, with the lowering of the mortgage rate of first-time home buyers, all have been done.
So what about garbage collection? Most Bermudians would like to see the garbage collected twice a week.
Some would like to see that, but I do, and I can attest that I'm sure if you speak to the Minister for Public Works, garbage collection has actually been more efficient, it has been more regularly collected, and we've actually had better garbage collection as a result. And it also was to ensure that certain issues that he had with equipment were addressed. So,
So
even
there's no truth to these rumors about an increase in the population of rats in Bermuda?
as the minister that has some responsibility for that, that was not a result of the decrease in garbage collection. That had to do with other factors, sir, not with the decrease in the number of collection of garbage. It like did not.
It just happened to happen at the
and
same time.
It did not happen at the same time. You are incorrect. It actually was going on about 2 or 3 years before that happened, the issue of the rats. And if you speak to farmers, they will tell you they had been battling with the rat issue long before even 2017, back as far as 2014. So you were incorrect to say that it had to do with the garbage collection. It did not.
Okay. I'll let him go ahead.
I'd actually like to piggyback off of what my colleague said. If you say that the rat issue did not start with the garbage collection, could you please explain why many people have said that they've seen these rats around after the garbage collection was shortened? I would like to hear your words on that.
I can give you an idea as to why that was the case. People were putting their garbage out in the wrong time and leaving it out, and thus rats were accumulating around garbage that should not have been out in the street to be collected because it was put out during the wrong time. That is one reason why you may have seen rats. People were not following the change in the time when garbage was to be collected. But I can tell you this, that the problem, as I said already to Mr. Fox, predates our change to the garbage collection issue. It had to do with other factors which are perhaps too lengthy to explain at this press conference, but have been explained before, but had nothing to do with the actual change in the garbage collection times or the decrease in the amount of times.
Sorry. So you say that it was because people were putting them out at the wrong times?
Yes, people were not following the change of garbage collection and putting their garbage out, and it was sitting out for days on the street, thus attracting the rodents.
This had, I guess on the same note, this problem had also continued on for, I would say, quite some time, at least a few months, if not years, which I'd imagine would kind of expand beyond a simple adjusting to a different change or a change in time. What would you say to that?
I would tell you that now I am, as the minister with some responsibility around these issues, it also is shared by the Minister of Health. I'm not hearing any reports about major issues with rats and garbage at the moment. Perhaps it's because, credit to many Bermudians, they've adjusted to the new time of collection, and that has addressed it. But we're not here to talk about garbage and rats. We're here to talk about the response to the OBA platform and the issues that they've raised.
Of course, one of their platforms is to increase garbage collection.
That's okay.
So that's why rats comes up.
I understand, but I think I've explained clearly the issue around the rats.
Yeah, one of the other things that they have proposed is education authority, an independent education authority. And they're also proposing to make the tourism authority also more independent again. So does the PLP feel that they should have more control over, in the case of the tourism authority? More control over that. I think the original idea when it was set up was that it would be pseudo-independent anyway, or mostly independent. And I think the Premier's indicated already that he wants to have some more control over it. I think also some more control over the gambling, the casino group as well. So why more control over these bodies, which I think the OBA wanted to have them more independent? What's the difference in the thinking?
Well, again, we're here to address the issues that the OBA has raised in their platform, one of which mostly is the fact that they are proposing to increase considerable amount of taxes on Bermudians. But I will address those few questions. As every government is, we have desired to take a particular approach to tourism, much different than our predecessors. The OBA set up the Bermuda Tourism Authority on their model. We desire a different model, which we believe we're actually in this very different environment, because when the Tourism Authority was set up in 2014 or to 2016, we were in a different environment. We're now in a post-pandemic environment where there needs to be direct, deliberate action to rebuild the economy, to rebuild tourism, to diversify the economy, to attract new investment, we believe that a different approach needs to be taken. We're not getting rid of the Tourism Authority. We're going to change its relationship with the government, and I believe that the Premier is taking that in the right direction. As it relates to gaming, well, there hasn't been any gaming industry in Bermuda. We are at the point of potentially seeing it set up. So perhaps we should wait to see what that looks like once we actually have gaming in Bermuda and how that will be administrated. But there is the Gaming Commission. It will be tasked with organizing and sort of shaping what that looks like. So we'll see what that looks like once we actually have gaming in Bermuda. It is not here yet, as you well know.
Don't you think the platform of the OBA actually looks a lot like the platform in a lot of ways of the PLP? I mean, they ask for a lot of the same things: equitable distribution of the assets. So in the country, they say, wealth should be distributed. They say, they talk about restorative justice. They talk about a lot of the same things that the PLP says. There's really not a whole lot of difference. There's really just some finer points in difference. I mean, don't you think there's a lot more commonalities than differences?
I'll give you this answer. Imitation is the finest form of flattery.
So is that a yes or no?
If they're imitating us, perhaps they just like our ideas. And they've decided to duplicate them in a way that they feel will be acceptable to the voters. Imitation is the finest form of flattery. As I've said, they've seemingly endorsed many of the PLP ideas in their own presentation. So they clearly think our ideas are very good as well. And I thank them for endorsing PLP ideas, whether in their platform or in their policies.
One of the interesting things that they have proposed is reducing the number of parliamentarians, reducing the size of cabinet. I mean, I think that's kind of interesting. Do you think that is something that's workable?
Well, some of those things will be the subject of perhaps constitutional amendments or other things. And again, those are ideas that have been fleshed out before, even by the OBA, and I believe, and UBP in previous platforms. And we'll see what they, perhaps you should ask them what they mean by those ideas.
So do you think that the Bermudians think there's too much government, too many politicians? Do you think?
Well, this government has been on a path of governmental reform for quite some time, and we will continue to push forward for that. But the issue of the number of legislators, that's more of a constitutional matter, and that's certainly not the subject of our platform at this point. Perhaps you need to question them on the rationale for their interest in proposing those things.
One of the other things that, since we're talking about their platform, because that's why you call this press conference, to talk about
Yes.
their platform.
Yes.
They're talking also about devolving some responsibilities to the parish councils, or more responsibilities to the parish councils. So what do you think about that?
Well, we ourselves, although this is something that will perhaps come later once the PLP government resumes governing after the election of October 1st, we will continue to look at how we can make the parish councils work better for the community in whatever way, through reform steps with much more engagement with them. We do support them considerably in their efforts. They are doing good work. Some of them are actually carrying considerable burden with caring for the communities of which in each parish. We will work with them to ensure that they can work better. Any other questions for the Deputy Premier? If not, then, if there aren't, then I will move on to Lindsay Simmons so you all can question her. Just to check, Mr. Lindsay, do you have any questions for myself before I move the mics? Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to Ms. Lindsay Simmons.
Good morning, Ms. Simmons.
Good morning.
You had mentioned earlier in your statement that was that there were old situations and things like that brought up, not only by the OBA but also the media that targeted the PLP. I was just wondering if you could clarify that statement, and if you would care to explain which that those almost attacks were and in what form.
Well, the main one, what I mentioned, was the premier meeting with Craig Cannoner, and saying that he asked Mr. Cannoner to speak to international business about getting to independence, which never happened.
Is that it?
Pretty much.
Pretty much?
Roberts.
Sorry, go ahead.
Did it? Okay, that's it.
That's it?
Hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from Ms. Simmons?
Yeah, so why you and not Craig Cannon for the people? So why should it be you and not Craig Cannoner representing the wishes of the constituents? What do you bring to the table that you think is better for the constituents?
So number one is I actually live in C12, so I have a vested interest in C12. Number two, I actually take the time to canvass C12 and care about C12. It's just it's the ABA's strongest seat, and I think that people should actually earn the seat, go out and work and show the community that you're actually behind them and want to find out what really their issues are, if there is any. I've been to a few houses where things that could have been fixed haven't been fixed, and just things that need to be addressed and taken to the table. So I have reached out to some of my colleagues to get some answers for people that could have been answered a long time ago. But nobody from either party has actually, for years, has taken the time to actually see what people in C12 want or need. And I think that it's kind of a shame because other constituencies are well represented. So C12 needs to be well represented. So that's why I'm running, so that I could show that I'm about strong leadership. I'm about putting the people first. I'm about service to my community.
So what are the things?
What other things?
So what are the things that need to be represented, need to be fixed that aren't being fixed?
Such as Barry Hill, how dangerous it is there. The wall that keeps on getting knocked on, things like that, and people in the personal, what's going on in the personal. I'm not going to reveal what everybody say about in the personal area, like it's things that I've reached out that they haven't been answered to as far as immigration. One person, it was an immigration issue, and I reached out to Mr. Hayward, and he got right back to me so I could get answers for people in my community. It's been a lot of questions that I've been able to send out to my colleagues and get answers for that haven't been addressed.
So, but, I mean, you're running for the government party,
Mm-hmm.
so you have connections. You should be able to get them addressed.
And the OBA has connections as well.
No, but I mean, you have a connection to, like, the Minister of Works for the Berry Hill Road thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
But
if they haven't been addressed, you have a way of getting them addressed. You have the ear of the...
And that's my
minister.
point, that nobody's been in the constituency to address these issues.
So you obviously are getting them addressed now.
Yes, I'm starting to.
That's- yeah.
Any other questions?
Sorry, just to follow up on my previous question. You had also mentioned that several media outlets had kind of been pushing the almost smear campaigns, if you will, the stuff by the OBA. Could you just again clarify what?
For example, the $800,000 that was put in the Royal Gazette 16 months ago. So it's not new news. It's news that's already been addressed, that the PLP is working to rectify, but it was put in just before the election. So it was sensationalized.
And still not found.
But they're working on it.
Yeah, but still not found.
But they are working on it.
I mean, I must admit, the timing was kind of interesting, but still, it is $800,000, which was still not found.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Alrighty. Thank you for coming today. If there's any more questions, that concludes today's press conference.
Thank you, everyone.